Someone said the thing, you know the thing. The remark in the meeting, the tone from your brother, the message that landed wrong, the slow person at the counter, the driver who cut across 3 lanes as though you were not there. And before you had decided anything, before any part of you that thinks had a chance to speak, your face was already hot, your jaw was already tight, your chest was already full, and the words were already climbing up your throat. By the time you noticed what was happening, it was nearly over. You said the sharp thing, or you swallowed it and carried it all day like a stone, or you sent the message you would read again at midnight and wish you had not. And here is what I want you to understand before we go one step further. You did not lose control in that moment. You never had it. You handed it away long before that moment ever arrived, and you handed it away in a particular place, at a particular gap, that almost no one has ever been shown. And once you are shown it, once you can see the gap, the thing you have been calling your temper, your nerves, your bad reactions, the thing you thought was simply who you are, turns out to be a door you can learn to put your hand on. I want you to sit with that because it goes against the story you have been told. You have been told that some people are just calm and some people are just hot, that it is temperament, that it is in the blood, that the best you can do with a strong feeling is grip it hard and force it down and hope it does not show. And so you have spent your life in a wrestling match with your own chest, and you have lost most of the rounds, because force against a feeling is the one thing that has never worked and never will. There is another way. It is older than the courses they sell, older than the breathing tricks, and it does not ask you to be a calmer person than you are. It asks you to learn one small movement in one small gap, and to practice it until it becomes the most natural thing in the world. The people who seem unshakable, the ones who stay quiet and steady while the room comes apart, are not made of colder stuff than you. They have simply found the gap. I am going to put your hand on it. My name is Jigme Dorji. I am a monk, and I am 76 years old. I have spent the better part of 60 years watching the human mind do the one thing it does most reliably, which is to be swept off its feet by a feeling and then spend the next hour explaining why it was right to be swept. People imagine that a man in a robe is born serene, that the shaved head comes with a still mind. It is not so. I was a hot young man. I burned at every slight, I argued. I carried grudges up the mountain and back down again, and I lost a great many small wars inside myself before anyone showed me how the thing actually works. What was shown to me then is what I am going to give you now, for free, in the next few minutes. It is the same thing dressed up and sold back to you in expensive seminars on composure and emotional mastery and executive presence, and the heart of all of it, the part that actually works, is so simple and so quiet that no one can build much of a business around it. So they sell you the costume. I am going to hand you the plain thing underneath. I am going to show you where the gap is and how to step into it. I am going to tell you the mechanism, the actual gears, so you trust it because you understand it and not because an old monk told you so. I am going to be honest about what this will do and what it will not, because there are people who will promise you that you can become a person who never feels anything sharp again, and that is a lie, and I will not tell you a thing that is not true. And then I am going to tell you the part that should trouble you a little, which is why a whole world that profits from your reactions will never teach you to be still. Stay with me. This one is worth 4 quiet minutes, and it may be worth a great deal more than that. Let me start with what is actually happening inside you when a feeling takes you, because once you see the mechanism, the rest makes plain sense. Between the thing that happens to you and the thing you do about it, there is a gap. it is very small. In a hot moment it can be less than a single breath wide, but it is always there, in every reaction you have ever had, a tiny space between the spark and the fire, between what landed on you and what you did with it. In that gap, and only in that gap, you are free. Before it, you cannot choose. The feeling arrives on its own, uninvited, the way weather arrives, and no amount of wishing keeps it from coming. After it, you cannot choose either. The words are already out, the door is already slammed, the thing is already done. The entire whole of your freedom as a human being lives inside that one small gap, and the reason you keep losing is not that you are weak. It is that you have never been taught the gap exists, and so you have been letting your reactions leap straight across it, spark to fire, with nothing in between. The people who study these things have measured the storm of a strong feeling, and they will tell you that the first hot surge of it, the flood that makes your face burn and your hands shake, runs its course and begins to fall away on its own in not much more than a minute and a half, if you do nothing to feed it. But you do not need their instruments. You have felt this too. The rage that felt eternal at the time was, when you look back honestly, a wave. It rose, it crested, it fell, and the only reason it ever lasted an hour was that you kept whispering to it, kept telling yourself the story that fed it, kept the fire burning long after the spark had gone cold. The feeling is not the problem. The feeling is weather, and weather passes. The problem is that in the gap, instead of standing still and letting the wave fall, you reach out and you act, and the action locks the feeling into the world where it can no longer be taken back. And here is why standing in the gap works where forcing the feeling down never has, because I will not have you thinking this is a trick of suppression. It is the opposite. When you force a feeling down, you are still gripping it, still wrestling it, still feeding it your attention. And a fed feeling does not die, it waits. But when you simply stand in the gap and do nothing, when you let the wave rise and crest and fall without acting on it, the feeling is not suppressed, it is allowed, and a feeling that is fully allowed and not acted upon burns itself out in moments and is gone. The calm person is not the one who feels less. He is the one who learned to stand in the gap a breath longer than you do, and in that extra breath the wave falls, and from the far side of the wave he chooses his response instead of having it ripped out of him. Now let me give you the 5 movements in order that teach you to live in that gap. The first movement is the one everything else rests on, and it is simply this. Name the wave the instant you feel it rise, not out loud, inside. The moment the heat begins in your chest, you say to yourself quietly, this is anger, or this is fear, or this is shame, or this is the urge to defend myself. That is all. It sounds far too small to matter, and it is the most powerful of the 5, because the instant you name a feeling, some part of you steps back from it and becomes the one watching the feeling instead of the one drowning in it. You cannot be wholly swept away by a wave that you are standing on the shore describing. The naming does not stop the feeling. It does something better. It puts a hair's breadth of space between you and the feeling, and that hair's breadth is the beginning of the gap, the crack of light under the door. The second movement is the breath, but not the way you have heard it. You have been told to take a deep breath, and you have tried it, and in a truly hot moment it does almost nothing, because you take one sharp breath and then you say the sharp thing anyway. Here is the difference. You do not take a breath to calm down. You take a breath to buy time. One slow breath is roughly 4 seconds. 4 seconds is most of the gap. You are not breathing to feel better. You are breathing to hold the door shut for the length of one breath, so that the wave has its 4 seconds to begin to fall before you are permitted to do anything at all. Make a rule for yourself, a hard one. No word, no message, no action until one full slow breath has passed. Not because the breath is magic, because the breath is a fence around the gap, and behind that fence the wave loses its first and worst strength. The third movement is the one most people skip, which is a shame because it is the one that wins the situation rather than merely surviving it. In the gap, after you have named the wave and taken the breath, you ask one question, and only one. What does this situation actually need from me? Not what do I want to say, not what would feel good to throw back. What does the situation need? The colleague who snapped at you needs, perhaps, to be met with a calm question rather than a counterattack, and the calm question will end the thing in a sentence, while the counterattack would have fed it for a week. My old teacher taught me this with words I have never been able to shake. He said, "The angry man fights the person in front of him. The wise man asks what the moment is asking for and answers that instead. The one who reacts is always answering the wrong question. He is answering the feeling. The one who wins is answering the situation, and those are almost never the same answer." The fourth movement is silence as a weapon, and I mean weapon plainly. In nearly every tense situation, the person who speaks first from the feeling loses, and the person who can hold a calm silence holds the power. Silence is not weakness, and it is not retreat. A steady silence in the face of someone else's heat does two things at once. It denies the fire, the fuel of your reaction, so theirs begins to fall as well, and it tells everyone watching that you are the one in command of yourself, which is the only command anyone truly respects. You do not have to win the exchange of words, you have to be the still point the words break against. Learn to let a silence sit 3 seconds, 5, 10, longer than feels comfortable, and watch how often the other person fills it by softening, retreating, or talking themselves out of their own position while you have said nothing at all. The fifth movement is what you do after, when the wave has fallen and the moment has passed, because this is where the calm person is actually built. When you have stood in the gap and chosen well, you do not congratulate yourself and forget it, you mark it. You notice quietly that you felt the wave, you named it, you breathed, you chose, and the world did not end and you did not have to clean up a mess at midnight. That noticing is what wears the path. Each time you stand in the gap and survive it, the gap grows a little wider and a little easier to find, until one day you reach for it without thinking, the way a practiced hand reaches for a tool in the dark. You are not trying to win one argument. You are building one wave at a time, a person who does not get swept away. That person is made in the small moments, not the large ones, and he is made by paying attention to his own small victories until they become his nature. That is the whole of it. Name the wave, breathe to buy the gap, ask what the situation needs, let your silence do the work, and mark the win so the path wears deeper. 5 movements, 1 gap. Stand in the space between the spark and the fire, and you become the one person in the room who cannot be moved. Now I have to be honest with you about what this will do and what it will not, because this is exactly where people overpromise, and I will not. This will not make you a person who never feels anger or fear or hurt again. It is not meant to, and you would not want it to. A person who feels nothing is not strong. He is asleep, and the feelings are not your enemy. They are information about what you care about. This will not let you win every shouting match, because the goal was never to win shouting matches. The goal is to stop being a person who can be pulled into one. And it will not work the first time or the 5th, the way it works the 50th, because this is a practice and not a trick, and the gap that feels impossible to find today becomes second nature only through the small repetitions of ordinary days. And if what moves through you is not ordinary anger but something heavier, a grief or a despair that the gap cannot hold, then hear me clearly, this is not a substitute for the help of a good doctor or a person you trust. Some waves need more than a breath. Be honest with yourself about which kind you are carrying. Now I want to take a moment because this is the part that matters. And it is bigger than any one argument. Think about who profits from you being easy to provoke. Nearly everything built to hold your attention in this world is built to move you, and a person who can be moved, angered, frightened, made indignant, pulled into the fight, is a person who stays, who clicks, who returns to the thing that stung him to be stung again. There is no money in your stillness. A man who can feel the wave rise and let it fall and walk away unbothered is a man who cannot be baited, and a man who cannot be baited is no use to a machine that runs on reaction. So you are trained all day from every direction to react fast and feel hard and answer immediately, and it is dressed up in fine words, authenticity, passion, speaking your truth, standing up for yourself, and some of that is real. But underneath it is a simpler thing no one profits by telling you. A person in command of the gap between feeling and action is a person who has quietly slipped the leash, and a population that has learned to be still cannot be steered by its own anger anymore. I am not telling you there is a villain who planned this. There is no meeting. It is simpler and almost worse. It is only that no one anywhere earns a coin from your composure, and so no one will ever sell it to you. You have to build it yourself, in the gap, one wave at a time. You were not born unable to pause. Watch a young child who has not yet been taught to perform every feeling instantly, and you will see that even they have a moment, a flicker, where they look up and decide. The pause was always in you. It was trained thin, worn down by years of rewarding the fast reaction and the loud one, until you forgot the gap was there at all, and came to believe the fire follows the spark, with nothing you can do in between. Nobody taught you otherwise. Not because the gap does not work, it has worked for as long as there have been steady people whom others instinctively trusted to keep their heads in every tradition, under every name. They did not teach you because stillness cannot be packaged and cannot be sold and asks nothing of anyone but you. It is yours. It was always yours. It was waiting in you, under all the heat the whole time. So here is what I want you to do, starting with the very next wave that rises in you today, and one will, because they always do. The moment you feel the heat begin, before you do anything, you name it. This is anger, this is the urge to strike back. Then you take one slow breath all the way, and you let the breath be a fence that nothing crosses until it is finished. Then, in the space the breath has bought, you ask the one question, what does this situation actually need from me? And you answer that, not the feeling. And whether you do it perfectly or clumsily, afterward you mark it. You notice that you stood in the gap and the world held. You do not have to believe me yet, you only have to try it once with one wave and feel for yourself what it is to choose your response instead of having it taken from you. The gap will teach you the rest. Then tell me in the comments below, what is the situation that takes you every time? The one person, the one tone, the one kind of moment that reaches past your hands, before you can stop it. And tell me, when you tried standing in the gap, what happened? I read every one of them. The things you tell one another down there teach the people who come after you far more than I ever could, and they are a great part of why I keep doing this. And if any of this rang true, if you are the kind of person who has long suspected that the simple thing was buried under the noise so that someone could sell you the complicated one, then come back, because there is more. The next thing I want to show you is the practice of the morning stillness, the few quiet minutes before the day begins that make the gap wider and easier to find all day long, so that the waves which once swept you find a person already standing on steady ground. It is the natural next step after this one, the other half of the same quiet thing. Until then, find the gap, let the wave fall, and remember this above all: the calmest, strongest people you have ever met were not born with cooler blood than yours. They simply learned to stand one breath longer in the space between the spark and the fire, until standing there became who they are. An old monk is only a hot young one who finally found the gap and never left it. Go quietly and begin.